want to talk about secret marriages.
Okay.
So what's the situation? If he's from a Desi family, what is the likelihood of him telling his mother?
Yeah.
I feel bad for Europeans who are aware of the state of play, because they know that their populations are dropping, that they're below replacement levels, and they also know that black and brown people have more children in general than white people.
Wallahi,
right?
I said this to Jada Fratton. I said, Jada, don't take it personally when Muslims have X amount of children.
Europeans came, they saw potential in our resources. They extracted those resources and created the Industrial Revolution. Good on you, fellas. Built some amazing systems, railroads. We benefit from that today, okay? But the reality is, when you came and imposed your religion, your language, your dress, your customs, etc. on us, we didn't like it. So now the tables have turned. It doesn't feel great, right?
And we're not even doing it with guns. Today's guest is a dear sister of the show and of the Five Pillars publication. She was last on in 2021. Recently bumped into her at the GMC Summit in Malaysia. She's the world-renowned author, motivational speaker. That's none other than our sister Naima B. Robert. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
We're going to talk about book writing. We're going to even do a small session after this podcast. I'm actually looking forward to that session. But you were at the GMC.
Alhamdulillah.
So you're definitely in the content creation space,
yes,
for sure.
Yes.
And what were your initial thoughts on that weekend?
SubhanAllah, you know, I said in my talk that, you know, I was only on that stage, and I think I was the only sister on the main stage, which was crazy because there were some other people that really should have been there too. But I was honored to share the stage with the, you know, people like yourself, like Mufti Menk, like, you know, the Sunnah guy, these people who've really achieved a lot in the space and have had that consistent output really over the years. And so what I said on that stage was that I'm only here because somebody mentioned my name in a room, right? And that led to me being invited. But then when I sat with it and I looked at what we've been able to do ever since Sisters Magazine, it's been a constant process of engaging with the community, seeing what the community may need. And that may be a reassuring sisterly voice. Sometimes it's a bit of a telling off. Other times it's an upliftment and a motivation. So being able to share what I've learned along the way and maybe some kind of vision for the future for us as Muslims in this space. If you remember how we ended my talk, I got everybody to stand up. It was so cheeky because I was almost over time. Yeah. But we managed to get everybody to stand up and to acknowledge that, you know, to say that the world will know we are here. And I said, you know, when I say we are, you say here. We are here. We are here. So it was a really, alhamdulillah, a high point. But I wanted people to take that responsibility, to say it's not just for now. It's not just for the algorithm. It's not just for the feed. It's for future. What are we building for future?
Your speech is going to be a core segment of this conversation because I stand by it. Wallahi, it was the best address. I said it on screen, and I'll tell you why that was. And we'll go into it later because there's a few things I want to talk before we get into that. It's the fact that many of the keynote addresses, even the kind of the cross panel I did with Faisal and the other brother, the Egyptian Canadian brother, about podcasting, it was kind of centered around growth, personal growth and virality. Yeah. Which, whether you like it or not, whether that's your intention or not, it's very self-centric. But your speech was about institutional building, legacy, longevity. So inshallah, I'm going to discuss that later on. But with regards to that, in the realm of social media and virality, there is a lot of self-centeredness. And
you are the brand.
You are the brand.
It's a personal brand thing. Yeah,
exactly. So that can have some spiritual obstacles and difficulties. Did you feel that? By the way, I thought the GMC Summit was fantastic. I thought it was delivered and executed very professionally.
Absolutely,
up there, if not above, way better than what you'd expect from professional standards.
Yes,
10 out of 10 for execution and
absolutely,
delivery.
mashallah.
I conveyed it to Brother Malaz from one path because the next one has to address X and Twitter.
Oh, we didn't talk about that at all, actually.
YouTube, we did Instagram, we did TikTok.
That's true.
We did short form mainly.
Yeah.
There was a lot of conversations around that.
There wasn't that much on YouTube, if you think about it. X was not mentioned at all.
But there were YouTubers there.
There were YouTubers
there. But X, considering how significant that is, how influential it is in terms of influencing policies and causing riots and so forth. I said, Malaz, X has to be covered. It's part of that space. What's your views on virality and just avoiding kind of a kind of self-centered mindset about you being the brand, and therefore you are the nucleus and center point and everything. It can make you a bit of a narcissist at times, even when you don't mean it to be that.
It is a lot of the time just you, you and your ideas and your team that are supporting you. And I don't know what the answer is, because obviously the ones who see success are the ones who take their personal brand seriously. I would say I'm a person who, I've started to take my personal brand very seriously, because this is all I have, right? Aside from the work that I do with others who are sort of ripples out into the environment. If I don't take my personal brand seriously in the sense of who I am, what I stand for, what my message is, how I deliver that message, and then execute on that, I'm going to suffer from what I have been suffering for, which is the dips, right? It's the ups and the downs, lack of consistency, lack of longevity. So I think remembering at the very beginning your why. Why are you doing this, right? Because a personal brand, but why are you building a personal brand? Why are you even putting yourself out there? And there could be a number of reasons which could be halal. Some may be more noble than others. For some, it's da'wah. For some, it's representation. For some, it's I need to make that money, okay? For some, it's, I'm an expert in this field. I have something important to say. People need to hear my voice. And I although that may sound egotistical, I think sometimes you genuinely do have something to say. You genuinely do have something that other people need. And so I think taking that seriously and giving it the respect it's due, and the platform that it's due, I think that more of us probably could benefit from doing that by remembering that why and that sincerity, and just trying to cleanse ourselves as much as possible.
Do you have any types of actions or things that you do to kind of check yourself periodically, intermittently? Is that a normal practice in the field of what we do?
I think definitely that intention, sort of, going back to Bismillah, going back to the bigger vision, right? And I'm a very big proponent of vision building and vision creation, and that long-term vision. What does it look like on a multitude of levels? What does it look like physically, spiritually, whether it's financially or whatever? So we talked about institution building, for example, right? If your long-term vision is to build an institute or a chain of children's homes, like in my case, right? What is the deeper meaning of that? What is the higher purpose? What is the real thing that's driving you? And what is it that you want to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with? If you do manage to build, that amazing vision, great. It's for this life. Is it sadaqah jariyah? Is it something that you are going to be asked about or, rewarded for, when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So for me, building that vision and making sure that it's built in, so the intention is built in, and the sadaqah element and the akhirah element is built into the vision, then everything else is like, as long as I'm going in that direction and anything I do is taking me in that direction, then that I'm comfortable with that.
Within a space of an influencer space, wallahi, I didn't think 5 to 8 years ago we would have to categorize it, whether we do it ourselves or others are done, the influencer space, right? So let's say, for example, if there's a handful of brothers who are within the online dawah space, and to keep each other checked and hold each other to account to avoid shortcomings and repeating mistakes and stuff, do you believe there's a healthy way of doing this, or do you believe that's something necessary and good?
I think it's good to have like your mastermind.
Yeah.
I think masterminds are really, really important on a business level, on a social level. And if you can, have a group of, brothers, or in my case, sisters, who are just looking out for you, just keeping an eye on your content, you're keeping an eye on theirs. Yeah, exactly. And, when you're having like a crazy idea, you go to them and you say, I'm thinking of doing X, Y, Z. What do you guys think? I think that's really, really helpful, because I think if you're by yourself all the time, what is it, shaitan? The wolf eats the lone sheep. Yes, the wolf eats the lone sheep. So if you're kind of charting new waters on your own and you don't have suhbah and you don't have people around you who care, about you and your reputation. I have friends. My friends are not in the space, but they will pull me up on things. I had a very interesting conversation about some of the things I've said about women online, and I was given a grilling. And my friend said to me, please, I beg you, don't speak about marriage anymore. And I said to her, why? And she broke it down, and I understood what she was saying.
Did you agree with her?
What I agreed with was that it's complicated. And I think those of us who make statements or say general things, it's just every situation almost seems to be different. So your generalizations may make sense to this group of people, but then they completely turn off or upset or hurt this other group of people because, you know, you're generalizing.
Can I give a likened analogy on why I would respectfully disagree with this dear friend or sister of yours? You know, if one were to say that in socioeconomically struggling families, the possibilities of crime and youth delinquency is higher through data and research. That's a general thing. But you know that case by case, things will be very different. Yeah. Each family has its own nuance, its own fracture, its own... So I think it's... And also, if you're married or been married, you're a mother, you're a parent, I think Yanni gives us a bit of... allow us a bit of space to just talk about our observations at least.
At least, I think, but I think it's also just being careful because I think different spaces lend themselves to different types of conversation. Yeah. So you can have a conversation with a lot of nuance where it's very clear that the people who are talking understand that, look, we're just saying this, but at the end of the day, X, Y, Z. And then there's other formats which are a lot more, it's black and white, it's like this, it's like that. Yeah. And you know, that's obviously short form versus long form, you know, they all have their kind of their differences.
On your
and clips from longer podcasts as well. That is a big issue.
But people who make up short form content in clips, that's what they're seeking.
It's clickbait. That's why they just want to get people riled up. And you know, I get it.
But literally, we're speaking about hooks at the conference.
Yes, we were.
We had people with millions of followers talking about hooks. Now, there's ethical hooks and there's outright lying clickbaiting stuff. Yeah. But everyone kind of employs it to some extent.
Well, what I don't like is, and which I think is unfortunate, is rage baiting men and women. That for me is just, okay, you may get the clips, you may get the virality, but it really is actually something that is poisoning. It's poisoning people's ideas about men or women, and it can be both. It can be done both ways, but I know that whenever my stuff has gone viral, it's usually a very small section of a longer conversation, which gets people either like really like, yes, someone finally said it. And then the opposite sex is like, oh, here she goes again. Pick me, final boss.
God. That's one of the accounts, wasn't it? Okay. No, we don't want people to direct them to that. But listen, a very, very identical example, right? A popular American Red Pill podcast, Fresh and Fit. Bazillion amount of clips with like women in the porn industry and that industry, but then when they're questioned about it, they're like, oh, but we have these different types of guests. I'm like, well, you specifically chose those clips to go viral.
No, but the majority of the content is based on that.
Is based on that. Yeah. No, but that's
disingenuous.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that short form content is used in that way, and it's not good. It's not healthy. It's damaging.
I've got a question.
Go for it.
Since you mentioned Fresh and Fit. I remember, and I don't know whether Fresh and Fit is still up there, whether they still have, you know, the views that they used to get and the sort of live viewers that they used to get. But I wonder whether people kind of stumbled upon their content, got super excited about the content and then moved on, or whether they're still there watching and sending super chats and stuff. Because I observed one live conversation that they were having, and there were all of these young men who were just so like enthralled by these guys who just seem to have everything. They seem to have the money, the girls, the power.
Very hedonistic.
Yeah, very, you know, this Miami lifestyle. Yeah. And they were just bigging them up and they were sending them money.
Yeah.
And I just thought, my guy, they're not giving you anything useful. Not only is what they're showing you a facade, which it was, we all found out later that, you know, it was not exactly as it appeared. But you're giving them money to tell you what you want to hear. And what you want to hear is that you either are the best, you know, the God's gift to women, or that you're a victim and women are the problem and society is the problem. And you guys are, you know, basically you guys are just like poor, you know, you're the ones who deserve the pity or whatever.
It's neither empowering or uplifting or transformational.
It made me sad. Yeah. It actually made me sad. Yeah. And I thought, if that's because, remember, when people watch that type of content, it's a rabbit hole, like any type of content, right? You go down and then YouTube starts to show you all the other stuff.
Yeah, that's how that works.
And then if you're watching a lot of YouTube, which, you know, obviously it's built so that you watch the next thing, next thing, that's programming. and it's dangerous. I've been down that rabbit hole, so I'm speaking as somebody who's been there. You know, I remember when my feed was just red pill from top to bottom, and it's hardcore, man. It's hardcore.
Because at one point I only saw Mahdi Tijani on my.
Oh God!
It was like, is there anything else out there?
Yeah, and that's the scary thing about the algorithm, how tailored it is to whatever it is that you're watching. You know, if I start watching any videos of sisters talking about a particular issue, I'm going to start to see more of those. And the more I watch them, the more my feed all of a sudden becomes just those types of things. Yeah.
It happens so quick. I'm going to have to watch what I titled our short form reels now. So I know you're going to have your eye on it. But inshallah, we won't say nothing too crazy. But back to your speech. You know, when you put the speech together, or the topic, or your choice of focus, was that done before the other speeches, or were you kind of thinking like, okay, when my time comes, I'm putting the speech together? Because it addressed such an unaddressed point during the conference, and that was longevity, institution building, book writing. Everything was about online and social media. Fine, it was a Muslim content creator summit. That's fine, that's a given. But yours really stood out because of those focuses. Is that something you had planned to do, or you thought about it whilst?
Actually, Brother Malaz gave me a list of points, and their main interest in me was that I had been in the space for a very long time, and I had really stayed true more or less to kind of how I started is more or less how I am now. So they asked specifically to find out about, you know, being true to yourself, you know, the power in your individual identity, etc. So I had that in the talk. But then as things were going, and because at the moment my real focus is reminding Muslims of the power of books, and because we were in a content creator summit where it's all online, it's all social media, I felt this is great, this is cool, but we can't forget that there is something that will outlast all of this, and I don't want us to miss that, you know. So that part, I knew that I wanted to say something about it, but then as I watched all the others, I mean, I thought they were brilliant. I felt so like a non-expert, to be honest, when I watched them all. It was so packed with value. So I just thought, no, I'm not going to come and talk about, oh, I did this and I did that in terms of social media, because I'm not the goat here. I'm learning from the goats.
Absolutely.
But what have I got to offer that's different, that's fresh, that's new, and how can I deliver it in a way that people will not forget? And alhamdulillah, Allah just brought it together.
It was a great address. And I learned so much as well. There's things I've implemented since I've got back.
Really?
Like a new YouTube channel. We're going to change up the studio. I've changed certain things with podcasts. I've learned so much from Faisal Chowdhury, from Freshly Grounded.
Yeah, me too.
So alhamdulillah, it was definitely a great experience. How many books have you written so far?
It's over 30 now.
Over 30. And which ones were the publisher where it was Penguin?
That's From My Sister's Lips.
Like that was
Random
pretty
House.
big, right? How long was that in the making? Because not everyone can land a publisher.
Oh, this was a long time ago. It was 20 years ago. So literally...
Has Penguin never done any more?
I don't think it... Well, so let me tell you the story. So
Forgive my ignorance about this
industry. That's fine. I met the woman who ended up being my agent because she wanted an author for some of her multicultural books. So we met, and then she told me she was an agent, and she told me, like, if you wrote a book about, you know, your life and your experience, I would find a publisher for it. So I said, okay, well, let me go ahead and do that. So I put together the outline. I think I wrote an introduction and maybe the first chapter, and she was the one who took it to some people that she knew at Random House, and that's how they picked it up. But the book came out around the same time as Irshad Manji's book came. I don't know whether you remember her. I think it was called Muslim Refusenik, if I remember correctly. And really, that's the type of book that the West likes. That's their favorite.
It's palatable.
It's palatable. It's enjoyable. It's kind of edgy in the right way. It's also confirming whatever it is that you think, which is that, you know, Muslims really, they are backward, and really, you know, any woman in her right mind really would not live that kind of lifestyle. So they came out around the same time. So even though I did get press for the book, alhamdulillah, I was on, you know, Good Morning TV and radio, whatever. But that book shot to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, and From My Sister's Lips didn't. So it was, I think, based on the advance that they paid, I think they thought that it was going to be this massive bestseller. For them, it wasn't. For us in the Muslim community, it's still one of those books that's just sells. But alhamdulillah, it just didn't end up being the huge hit that I think they thought that it would be. So,
did anyone have any whiff on Manju's book coming out and it being time and
no idea. I wouldn't have known. I was just like a newbie author, and in those days there wasn't that much in terms of social media buzz, and there was no Twitter and stuff, so you wouldn't have known. But yeah, alhamdulillah. I mean, Allah knows what the eventual impact of anything will be. And you can start something and think it's just going to be a small thing, and Allah takes that and just blows it up. You can also start something and think you're going to have 1 million readers, and that's just not what's written for that particular project. So alhamdulillah, I'm grateful for that book because of the lives that it touched, and it continues to touch to this day, alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Allah accept it from you, sis.
I mean,
you spoke about earlier about dips. When you're focusing on a brand, whether it's yourself or it's an organization that's primarily being headed or led by you and you're the public face, and you face dips, and those dips, the reasons for it could vary. Like, I've seen it myself. My dips are usually concerned with consistency, a lack of consistency in the brand of what I'm pushing out. A lack of diversity as well. For a journalist anyway, you're always focusing on one thing and you're not giving your people a diversity. So I've experienced dips, right? But I've also found certain dips where it has come close to me even questioning why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you?
Of course.
And how do we deal with those dips? Because I don't deal with those dips, but obviously speaking to your loved ones, your wife, your family, your mashayikh, your people you make shura with, generally, and then you kind of try to look at it with fresh eyes. But it happens, and it does get to the point where, like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's a chore. Am I doing it for the right reason? Are those type of dips normal, and how do you deal with them, or have you previously dealt with them?
I think they are normal. And I think, like you said, there's so many reasons why you may have that feeling of, like you said, I just don't want to do this anymore, or I can't do this anymore. In my case, life things will impact. So, for example, when I moved from Egypt to Zimbabwe, moved back to Zimbabwe, I knew it was going to be a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like intense season. So I took a hiatus, 3 months, 4 months off completely. No socials, no work, no book coaching, nothing. Terrible mistake. But alhamdulillah, like, I felt that's what I needed to do. And
how long ago did you do that?
2023. So it
that's
wasn't
recent.
It's very recent. Yeah. And it's not I've done it again since, actually. And now that when I went to the GMC summit, what I came away with, just the fact that I was invited to speak, the fact that I was on that stage, and when I was on that stage and I delivered, I didn't feel like a fraud. I didn't feel like a fake. I didn't feel like a diversity hire. I felt like, no, I've earned my place on this stage. That was huge for me. And after the GMC summit, I was like, Naima B. Roberts' game is going to 10x, and it has to. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please give me the strength to, firstly, get clear on what it is that I'm going to do. Secondly, bless me with a team and systems so that I can stay consistent, even if it's not me personally. The output is there, the message is there, the work is there, and so that whole experience of just, seeing, and if you notice, every single person, when they were asked about what is the difference between success and failure, consistency. So that's tough. And I've seen even with sisters in my space, sisters, women in general, we're cyclical, right? We don't operate like men. So that kind of hustle, bro, wake up at 4 a.m., take an ice bath.
Doesn't come instinctively, or it's not normal.
It's not normal for us, and it doesn't feel great. So you may go through a season, of that, but you can't keep it up. You can't keep it up. We burn out.
I think it's fun either.
Oh, do they?
No, I don't think they do. I think baby brothers would be like, no, I can't be asked to wake up and wash my face with ice and run alongside my Mercedes G. But yeah, I get what you mean. It's not normally expected for the women folk.
Well, interestingly enough, in terms of business success, that is the model. That's the blueprint, right? If you want to be this, you need to be a beast. Basically, we're not built to be beasts. So now the conversation is shifting a lot more to, ladies, let's have success on our own terms. But I'm saying, okay, I hear that, but the consistency has to remain. So whether it's your team doing it or you've scheduled it out or whatever the case may be, we can't afford to have those peaks and troughs, because every time you peak, you bring people up with you. When you disappear, it's like you've ghosted them.
Yeah.
It's like somebody put a comment on one of my posts, said, when are you going to upload to your YouTube channel? And I just sent the crying emoji and I said, I promise I will. I have 4 videos waiting to be uploaded. But again, I went through a hardcore period, 2021, 22, to build a channel to 50K. And then it was too much. It was just too much. So the red pill stuff, the marriage stuff, the controversy, and just the output. And then I moved and I was like, I just want to take a break from this for now. But don't worry, I'm coming back, inshallah.
Inshallah. Now, one of the things you did after the conference was you at least stuck it on me. You stuck it on Faisal about writing books. And you're like, listen, your experiences, your life, everything, the work that you've done in the last 12, 13 years, how come you've not written one yet, and so forth. Why were you so passionate about that? And for those who you could say it to, myself being one of them, was like, I
said it to everybody. I said, Chris from Launch Good, where's your book? I spoke to you. I said, where's your book? Digital Sisterhood, Adar, where's your book? Like, everybody, where is your book? And of course, the main thing is that everybody who's doing really well is busy. So that's why I'm creating something for you guys. But that is the thing, is that, look, and this is what I said in my talk, look at any of the biggest opinion formers, the biggest content creators, podcasters, etc. They all have a book. Diary of a CEO, book. Lewis Howes at School of Greatness, book. Mel Robbins, book. Oprah, book. Like, that's the blueprint. And that's the part that we're missing as Muslims, because I'm not seeing us do that. There are few who are doing it. MashaAllah, Muhammad Faris, he's doing it, but he's not a content creator. You know, that he's more of a thought leader, MashaAllah. So the books actually lead everything else. But for those of us who are in the online space, who have access to great ideas, like, for example, Brother Faisal, what I said to him is, your book probably would look more like distilling the best ideas from all of the conversations that you've had over the years and putting them into a book. That's what Lewis Howes did. You know, it's not his story or his message. It's literally, look, I've spoken to the dopest people on the planet, and I'm going to share with you what I took from it or what they said, etc. So that was the thing that I'm noticing. Mashallah, the content is there, the platform is there, the audience is there. Sometimes behind the scenes, which is again something we're missing, but there's sometimes is some kind of offer, whether it's a course or a community or something like that. I'm seeing that's not across the board. But then you guys are thought leaders. You are thought leaders. You lead the opinions of the Muslim community. You make other people really cross in your case, right? The
right people, I'd like to believe.
Yeah, well, but put your stake in the ground, put that flag pole in the ground and say, yes, this is who we are. This is what we've built. This is what we believe. This is what we have to share, and put that out there for posterity, because who knows what will happen to these platforms? Let's be real. Yeah. You know, there are people who are building on, what was so many platforms.
Yeah, by emails, everything's here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Includes your domain.
Yeah, exactly.
So by email addresses, there's not really anything really there.
Yeah, exactly.
On book writing, now we're going to do something after this podcast, but allow me to delve into some of that, which we're going to do as a separate exercise after the podcast. Writing a book for many appears to be a daunting experience, right? I say this as a journalist, someone who's experienced writer's block many times throughout my years of journalism. I don't write as much as I used to. I don't write anywhere close to what I used to. But writing, putting pen to paper or finger to laptop, it's a daunting task, especially if it's an exercise that you don't regularly do, right? So what is the first thing that someone who would want to write a book, like I have 2 or 3 ideas, which I think may do well. It has a purpose, it has a focus, it has a particular objective, but it seems long. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Yeah, I mean, it's long.
If I tell you that it's not long, I will be lying to you.
Okay, so it is.
So let's. It's longer than a podcast.
Oh, for sure.
It's longer than a blog. Okay. But it's not impossible to do with consistent effort. 10 minutes a day will get you a result in 90 days.
So writing 10 minutes a day.
So before we get to writing, so once you establish your why and the sort of deeper meaning, the higher purpose, and exactly what the book is about, who it's for, and you've built, the planning is huge, right? So getting clear on, well, what is this book actually going to cover, right? What is everything I have to say?
What if you have multiple ideas?
Then you go with the lowest hanging fruit, I say. There's two things that need to be at the intersection of that. So the easiest one for you to write, so the one you need to do least research, least interviews, least traveling around and doing whatever.
My life.
Easiest for you to write and closest to your heart. Right. So that's usually something to do with legacy or sadaqah jariyah or something that will, gain Allah's pleasure, for example. Right. So the intersection of those two, that's your first project. And you put everything else to the side. And when you get an idea for one of the other ones, you make a note and you put it to the side. And you have to keep just putting it to the side so you can focus on this thing. Planning. What's in chapter 1? What's in chapter 2? What's in the book? How do you want the book to flow? What kind of a journey do you want to take the reader on through this book? And then in chapter 1, if I'm talking about my young days, specifically what? Only things that are relevant to the book, obviously, not just everything. Mm-hmm. And once you've built out that outline, a very kind of granular outline, it's much easier.
What about the creative aspect of telling that story?
That's now when you start writing. That's the creative side. That's the language you use.
What if you're not great at writing?
Not everybody wants to read a really creative story, crazily enough. So we set a standard for ourselves for how our book should sound. Mm-hmm. And I tell the ladies in my program all the time, the women, for example, who are recovering from a divorce and they want to read something to help them to recover, they are not going to be bothered about your writing not being Pulitzer Prize winning. They may not care about your descriptions and stuff like that. They may not even want a long book. They just want something that can give them what they're looking for. So again, it depends on, is this book being written for a literary audience? Or is it more of a guide and a how-to? If your audience is academics, your language has to be up there. If your language is other creatives, then your language needs to be there. And if it's something for the amateur nurse, for the average person to be able to take, then mashallah, that's the simplest of all to do. But it doesn't have to look any particular way, but it needs to look some way so that you can make progress towards that.
What about ghostwriters and in the world of AI, how can that hinder or enhance creativity?
I think
and efficiency.
I would say ghostwriters are probably going to lose their jobs over the next 3 years, a few years, if they haven't already, because ghostwriting is hard. Okay, it's not easy, and they're expensive because it's hard. An editor is cheaper. And editing is easier than ghostwriting because a ghostwriter sits with you and interviews you at length about all the things in the book. Then they go away and they write the text from scratch. So ghostwriting is not an option for most people, certainly in our community, because it just costs too much money. It's 10 grand plus. AI is a better option. But what I will say, and nobody's probably going to listen to this, but don't use AI for your iterative process. So AI should not create the idea. It shouldn't create the draft. You should create the draft and let AI help you to refine it. That is, I feel, where AI can really help. For example, say you've got half an hour to talk and okay, in this chapter, this is what I want to say. Talk it through. Record your voice. Get it transcribed by, which is AI, I guess, Google, whatever, and put that into Claude or ChatGPT and ask it to kind of shape it into something that is suitable for reading and see what happens and see what comes up. Read it and see if you like it. Does it sound like you? If not, you can tell AI, do less of this, do more of that. I don't like these long sentences, whatever the case may be. So we are definitely going to be training AI to do a lot of the work that we currently do. And unfortunately, it's going to mean a few things. Some people's jobs will be gone completely. Some people's will just be de-skilled, so their skill level will go down. But I see that across the board with us as human beings. There's just so many things that we just can't do by ourselves anymore. Can you remember your auntie's telephone number? No. I can't. I don't even know my kids' telephone numbers. I just ask my phone for it. So I don't think it's a process that we can ignore. At this point in my life, I'm not really interested in being a Luddite. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not interested in being anti-AI. No, bring that chat GPT, help me to make that money, help me to create that company, help me to, style my team, help me to create all these things to basically 10x my efforts. And again, people may disagree and say that it's the end of civilization, but I'm not going to die on that hill. I've got other hills to die on.
Yeah, for sure. I think the kind of anti-AI type of the Jalik narrative is a bit intense.
I mean, it's that you can see.
Yeah, I can see what they mean,
and you can also see its potential for disaster.
Absolutely, but to have such an absolutist mindset and approach now, where it can be used to be more efficient and to refine your work, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So on that point, then, how much AI is incorporated into your personal book coaching?
At the moment, nothing. At the moment, nothing, because literally I'm only becoming comfortable with it now. But what I will be doing is training up a chat bot to be me, so that my clients can basically get my feedback on their work as they go. And also just creating more like systems so that they're able to be guided along the actual writing process a lot more. Because previously what we would do is we would do a lot of planning together, and then I would say, go and write the book. But then when the book comes back, I realized that if we had been able to go through the flow of the chapter in more detail, they would have been able to write something closer to what it needs to be, if that makes sense. So I am looking into what systems I can use, especially for like our the offering that we have for like thinkers like yourself who do not have the time to write, really, who are not going to commit the time required to write a 30, 40, 50,000 word draft. How can we leverage AI and what you already have? Don't steal my idea, you guys. Please, please, please. Copyright only. But to be able to leverage that to create something that is you, but that you didn't necessarily write yourself.
Now, a period which is actually still ongoing, where we saw huge sales of books, was the culture wars, right? During the culture wars, whether you're in the kind of very hardcore woke left progressive feminist camp, or in the red pill camp, or this kind of resurgence of mega make West white again type of movement, books have sold in high numbers.
This is true.
And made lots of revenue. Now, one of the topics of the culture wars to do with relationships and marriages. Well, in the Muslim space, it was to do with marriages. In the non-Muslim space, it was to do with all the various types of relationships and lack of stuff. Now, we've already touched upon that. It was a subject which a dear friend of yours said to kind of, avoid, stop it, because it's misconstrued, and so forth. Do you think the polarized climate or environment that we did have a couple of years ago is still there, of which some of your sound bites were used as part of? Do you think that culture is still there, or do you think it's died down?
I do think that we reached a peak in 2022, maybe 23, and it's kind of, to a certain extent, it's no longer the focus. And I think Gaza has a big part to play in that.
Well, I agreed.
Yeah, I think it's not because people have solved the issues. It's not because we're on the same page. It's just because Gaza is there, and that's the most important thing. So I think what I would say is Muslims obviously didn't write very many books during that time. But I think that everyone can see that we are in very unfamiliar territory. I was just in Oldham, spoke to lots of sisters, and mashallah, like this is why it becomes difficult to speak about the Muslim community, because there's no such thing.
We're not one monolith.
We're not a monolith in any way. So, for example, one sister was telling me how she moved from Manchester to Oldham, I think it was, which for many people, like, Oldham is Manchester, right? But she said she moved from Manchester to Oldham, and in Manchester she wouldn't have dreamt of driving. But in Oldham, her husband got her like lessons, for example, right? So just these shifts, one sister asked a really good question that just opened up a big discussion, because no one had the answer. She said, our girls, we want them to do well. We want them to succeed. And, they're doing well in school. As you know, girls are outperforming, blah, blah, blah. We want them to do, and we want to support them in their dreams. How can we keep them soft? How can we keep them feminine? How can we ensure that they are still connected to those traditional roles? And that is a huge conundrum for everybody at the moment, right? What is the tradition that we want to keep? And the answer varies because men want some of those things to stay and women want some of those things to stay. And then amongst men and women, even there isn't consensus, right? There are some women who are, yearning for a more traditional setup. And their husbands are like, no, you're a doctor, we should do 50-50, for example, right? And then there are other women who feel stifled by a traditional setup and want to do something completely different. So these issues, we are not addressing. I'm not hearing scholars and ulama really addressing these issues, not based on what Islam says, because we all know what Islam says, based on what's happening on the ground, what's happening in people's family cultures, in their neighborhood cultures, and how we can make sense of, what should we be telling our daughters, for example? What should we be telling our sons? Should the sons cook? Should the sons clean? This was another question that came up, actually, One sister said, my husband helps with everything in the house, but he will not let my sons touch anything because he says that's not their job. But of course, the girls have to. So it's like, how much of what we grew up with culturally...
This was in Oldham, was it?
This is in Oldham, yeah.
So now, demographically, Oldham has a heavy Pakistani community,
Yes.
as well as a Bengali community.
Yes.
Was that the type of demographic you were dealing with?
Yes.
Okay. So look...
Desi culture is a thing.
Yes. So coming from that culture...
Yeah.
And being the demographic majority of Muslims in this country,
Yeah.
the vast majority of either Pakistani, Bengali or Indian Gujarati, that's the largest group.
Yeah.
And we have cultures like all of our other brotherly counterparts, Turks, Arabs, Africans, whatever it may be. And you have these types of norms, ways. Some of it gravitates towards, I wouldn't say regressive, that's a harsh term, but something which isn't quite conducive, I'll put it lightly, to a harmonious setup. Other things are
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Other things are well intended. Other things, we spoke about this in 2021 when you were on. There were certain things from our grandmother's era, our mother's era, which is lost and it's gone. And now we are seeking it and we are experiencing the problems of abandoning it, whether intentionally or not. So the imbalance of the modern life, I believe, is one of the reasons why we're seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah.
The fact that in Britain, at least, and broadly speaking, the West, a dual income is necessary and needed.
Yeah.
It's all good and well.
And nobody wants to be poor anymore.
Yeah, no,
let's be clear. Nobody wants to be poor for the sake of mom staying at home.
Yeah.
People are not comfortable with that anymore because maybe their parents did that. It would have been the grandparents now, actually. Yeah. Maybe the grandparents came, they struggled, they scrimped and saved, but they put the kids in school, right? And they helped them to get to where they got to. And to ask people to take a step back economically is a very big ask.
But we have entered a point, sister, where things like expectations of annual or biannual holidays, to drive a particular type of car, to have a certain type of living standard, whether it's expected amongst some sisters or it's something which the brothers have, whatever it may be, these are real life things.
Yes.
Whether it's the 50-50 setup, but all the various different type of variables. For example, you are in a marriage where both husband and wife are working and earning, but there's a disparity in how much someone's hands-on with household chores and childcare. It's an entire massive debate, right? Yeah. And it's still to be had. And I do believe that Gaza genocide put a pause on that.
Yeah, but I think also people are doing what they as much as they can, what they know, or what they manage to negotiate within their relationship, right? And I think, that's the bottom line, is that at one point there was much more consensus. If you, the man, you work. If you're the woman, you stay at home, and your role is in the home. And if you do other things for income generation, that's your money, right? I say that there was a consensus, but we did, of course, have sisters who were, getting benefits, and that was what was paying for everything. And maybe they were a second or third wife or whatever, so maybe it's never been as simple. Maybe in the West, everything is a lot more jungly.
Dynamic gives it a positive spin, but I would say maybe not so culturally consistent. Like you're dealing with so many different things.
Yes.
Housing, affordability, bills, utilities, responsibility, trying to maintain some level of preserving tradition and culture whilst living a conservative life.
And a lot of people have not been raised traditionally. They may think that they were, but you actually
have siblings who differ.
Right.
You have siblings who are more practicing than ones who don't even follow the deen. And, and you have that now in 2025.
Yeah.
But had there not been a genocide in Gaza, would you have been still engaged in these conversations? Like one of the most famous viral clip of yours was the advice that you would give as a red flag if your son was going to get married.
I still stand by that. 10 toes down.
Yeah.
10 toes down. In fact, one of my young girls, mashallah, my friend's daughter who I've seen grow up from young, she was taking me to task about that. I said, you know it's true.
It was on point.
You know that it's true. If you are giving a man a chance because maybe it didn't work out here, there, and you think, you know what, okay, fine, I'll give it a go. You know that he's on the back foot, right? And you know that that isn't great for your, respect and regard for him. So it doesn't sound nice. And unfortunately, this is the thing, right? This is the actual thing that makes me, the word is not uncomfortable. I don't know what the word is, but the fact that
Awkward.
it's awkward. It's awkward because the dynamics between men and women, they don't sound great. They don't feel good, especially for a woman with modern sensibilities. It just doesn't sound good. It doesn't. The optics aren't great. But biologically, some things are an imperative. Sometimes fitra is an imperative. So the whole thing of polygamy, for example, we don't have to go into that today. But again, that's one of those things. If you say men are polygamous by nature, there could be societies in the world where everyone knew that was the case, right? Biologically, it's the case. Fitra is the case. But today, it's awkward. I don't like the way that sounds. I don't like what that tells me about men. I have resistance to that idea. And I think there are a lot of things that are, from the Islamic faith, not culture, but Islamically, this is what we draw from what Allah has told us about men and women and responsibilities and roles, right? That Allah has told us we've always, as Muslims, always followed, pretty much the rest of the world also followed. But now in a postmodern society, they don't sit well with us anymore. It just doesn't sit well with us. We don't like the idea, right? It doesn't sound good. It doesn't make me feel good. And that's a big issue, It's a big issue because it's like now you don't want what's true to be true because the truth doesn't sound good, doesn't feel good. And that's tough. And I think one of in this conversation, what I said to the sister is that I stand 10 toes down on what I said because I believe it to be true. And I believe it to be backed up by the deen, or not this particular one, but just in general. And even if you don't like it, it's still the truth. And unfortunately, today, if something doesn't sound nice, people don't want to hear that it's the truth.
They link truth to how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not the way truth works.
No, unfortunately
some truths are difficult to swallow, and some truths you have to accept head on.
Yeah, and some truths are worth kind of shouting about, and others are just not, which is also a case because sometimes the truth of a situation is not even what the deen teaches, right? So, for example, the idea that a man looks for youth and beauty, right? And that in general, across the board, any man will go for a chaste, beautiful young woman over any other option, okay? Biologically, makes sense. Culturally, makes sense. The deen shows us something different. The Prophet ﷺ's choice shows different. The Sahaba and the way they did things, it kind of shows us different. So sometimes the kind of human truth is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not even pushing on us and saying you should do that. He's like, no, look at it this way, look at it that way. I don't know. It's complicated. It's complicated.
How do you, I was going to ask you this, and how do you manage the cultural sensitivities of engaging with groups of Muslims who are not necessarily from your ethnic culture? I say this because, mashallah, you've done stuff with Sister Rayan, Sister Layinka and others. They perhaps could be a more resemblance, similarities. I'm choosing my words very carefully here. But to deal with a particular South Asian demographic, that comes with very, very kind of like ingrained and acute cultural things. For example, there is absolutely a ladla culture where the boys are mollycoddled. Yeah. They are excessively given love by their mothers. Yeah. The sisters are basically like co-parents. Yeah. It's changing, but it still very much exists. Yeah. There was a notion, there's an entire industry, Bollywood and drama series around the evil mother-in-law. Yes. To the extent now we've now entered the stage of evil daughter-in-laws now, right? Oh, okay. I think that aspect has switched up so much. Right. But there's these things there. Yeah. who does the cooking, who does the cleaning, the Ramadan cooking and cleaning, staying with in-laws, staying with parents. It's still a very big thing.
Yeah.
I know amongst Pakistanis and Bengalis, not sure about the Indian Gujaratis, but it's still a thing. When you are checking out perspectives, one of the things that sisters will very commonly ask is, what's the living arrangement?
Yeah, of course.
Whereas in other cultures, it's just assumed you won't be living with parents.
So many things,
like it's ajib.
Yeah.
Whereas with us, it's still a thing.
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
My younger brother did it.
Yeah.
My cousins and everyone else did it. My friends who are Pakistanis and Kashmiris, they did it.
Yes.
So how do you manage with those kind of cultural dynamics and differences when you come from a different culture yourself?
I think it's a really, really good question. And I think it's definitely something to bear in mind. If you are giving advice, often my advice will be about the woman herself. No matter what your situation, there are certain mindsets and attitudes that will be helpful to you. And there are mindsets and attitudes that will not be helpful, no matter what your situation, whether you're living with in-laws, whether you're kind of the sole breadwinner, whatever the case may be. So try not to be prescriptive with regards to that. But also some things I will call out, right? Because that whole thing, did you call it ladla?
Ladla.
Ladla.
Ladla. Ladla. Ladla.
Ladla. So
mollycoddling is
we actually did speak
Golden
about this. Right. Now we spoke about this because one sister, she put her hand up and she said, the way we are raising our sons is ruining them. And I said, girl, preach, because we know that that's true. Now, why is it the case? I'm sure a psychologist would pull out lots of different things about codependency and whatever. That's not my job to do. But what we have to ask ourselves, and this is my main message when I speak to especially groups of very strong cultured communities, you are the next generation of aunties and uncles. What is going to stay and what is going to leave is down to you. You get to decide, right? So, for example, if as a society, as a community, as a family, you decide that the pros of living with your in-laws for a short while or however long outweigh the cons, that's what you're going to perpetuate on the next generation. If you realize that I spoiled my sons and I created weak boys who are now giving their wives problems, I'm going to change that now moving forward. Does that make sense? So those cultures will shift, and it will be up to this generation now, who are the next generation, stepping up into masjid administration, stepping up into, being the aunties and uncles who make the decisions within the family, who are the mothers-in-law. That's us. Right? So anything can change. No culture is set in stone. And it's up to you guys to decide what's working for you and what's not working for you.
Why can it not be? No. I'm glad we've finally gone into it, because when you said before we started filming that Britain is your happy place. Yeah. When you deal with, I'm sure you're happier in other places, but you may perhaps...
Not Britain, but British Muslim community.
British Muslims, that's what you mean. Yeah. And when you talk about it, you are ultimately talking about a group which is significantly South Asian, right? Why can it not just be, because I've asked this for myself, I've seen certain habits within my own family, immediate, extended, around the community, that some behaviors or approaches employed by the mother, primarily towards her son, it can have benefits. It can make him more compassionate and understanding and sympathetic and sensitive to women because he had loving mothers and sisters. Others literally come out as child men, or man boys, right? I've seen both. Yeah, I've seen petulant jealousy and childish behavior, but I've also seen forthrightness because a brother has seen the hardship of his mum and he never wants to repeat what he's seen his dad do.
Sure.
So I've seen both. Yeah. But given those sensitivities, right? Why can it not just be, and I'm just putting this out there, why can't it just be like an urfi thing whereby some of the Sahaba complained about the women of Medina? They were outspoken. Yeah. They always had something to say about something. They'd encourage the Meccan women to do the same, whereas Meccan women were perceived to be a bit more agreeable and not so outspoken. Could it not be a case of that? And sometimes those practices can have certain outcomes. Brothers and sisters and friends, I see that you're enjoying the content. How come you've not clicked subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel? And if you're watching via Rumble, how come you've not subscribed on our Rumble channel? If you like the content, you like the guests, you like what we're talking about, it's absolutely inexcusable and cheeky for you not to click subscribe. Thank you and Jazakallah khair.
Listen, everyone's going to experience the consequence of their choices. Yani, what is it if you just do whatever you like? At the end of the day, people can have opinions, people can give advice, people can give reminders. Ultimately, everybody will decide what is worth fighting for and what price they're prepared to pay for whatever it is that they feel is important. So, for example, if you as a woman believe that, you know, it's important for my daughter-in-law to live with me, I want my sons with me, etc., that's the most important thing, then be prepared to pay the price, whatever that is, because there's nothing that comes without a cost, right? So I'm not sitting in judgment of any of those things, because we have stuff in our culture that we do that's different,
But
right?
you're saying choices have repercussions at times.
And exactly. And as I think, as it's helpful, let's start with the family unit rather than like society or community, because that's too high level.
Yeah.
As a family, for example, do you get a chance to sit and reflect? Maybe you're the eldest son. Yeah. Or you are the children of the eldest son or the eldest daughter or whatever, the matriarch or the patriarch, and look at the family and say, like, how are things going? You know, is the way we're doing things working? If it is, alhamdulillah. If it's not, you know, like, what do we need to change? For example, if you allowed your sister to marry into a particular family and maybe there was some concern about that, whatever, I'm sure if it doesn't work out, you're going to think twice next time. You're going to be like, we did that before. Yeah. We as a family, we're going to go this way, whether it's marrying within the same culture or the same language or the same, you know, economic bracket, or, you know, she married someone and she had more money than him and it didn't work this way. Next time, let's, you know, like, course correct. But I can see you're pushing for the culture to remain, and alhamdulillah.
I just think certain aspects of the culture, because look, Islam did not come and neither did it spread to our lands of heritage because it washed away with culture.
Absolutely.
It absorbed culture. It harmonized culture, and it did away, or at least attempted to do away with that which opposed Allah and His Messenger. For example, you know, when we were speaking about the Ladla mindset, right? I have a theory behind that, and I also have a theory behind why polygyny is acutely seen with great suspicion within South Asian culture. And I'll explain to you why. Yeah. Before we were Muslims, we were Hindus, right? Hindus have a very obscure understanding of how marriage, belonging and loyalty is. They have a thing called satya. Satya means the husband dies, the woman shaves her head, goes into a temple, dresses white, and never gets married again.
Doesn't she burn herself on the fire?
That's the highest level. That's the pinnacle of faith.
Okay.
That's the pinnacle of what they deem to be loyalty to the husband. She's literally worship. Like, he's like a demigod type of thing, and it's, you know, we said ride and die.
Yes.
Literally, it's literal ride and die, right? Irrationally ride and die. Or they'll shave their heads, they'll be in white saris and they'll stay in temples, right? So forget about polygyny,
right?
Yeah, even though that must have been exercised in a very different and more kind of deviant way, because in pre-modern times, multiple female partners for a man, especially as a chieftain or a leader,
if he has
he's
resources,
he's going to practice in some way. But the religious culture was the woman stays loyal to the husband, doesn't get remarried. It's dishonorable to get remarried again. She would kill herself, burn herself, or stay in the temple. So when we became Muslim, remnants of that remain.
I see that.
That mindset remains. Wallahi, I know brothers who have said to me that, bro, my wife actually said a mistress on the side or something out in the weekend is better than dishonoring her with another marriage.
Wow.
And I still hear that.
Yeah.
And to hear that, I understand why would she have that? That's because it is such a red flag. Yeah, because look, Kurdish women would be jealous, as would Nigerians, as would South Asians, as would Arabs, as would Kurds, as would be reverts of any stripes and colours. Jealousy exists. The wives of the prophets were jealous of each other. But this kind of entire tabooness and censorship around polygyny in Desi culture is to do with what we were pre-Islam.
Okay.
And because we stayed living around Hindus as well, it kind of just stuck with us.
And would that be then why, like, a divorcee is seen as like that's the end?
Like the amount of extended family women that we had, aunts who became widows at such a young, healthy age, never married again. Okay. Simply because it would be seen in a particular way. Right. Now, alhamdulillah, it's changing.
Yeah.
Aunts are getting remarried. Sisters who get divorced are getting remarried. That's something you can't avoid. We are living in the West.
But is that a sign of the culture changing and shifting?
No, it's a sign of Western diaspora communities having to accept that you can't prevent remarriage.
Okay.
You can't stop your daughter from remarrying.
Right.
You can't stop her from going to Muslim. You can't stop her from seeking someone. Because
So if you could stop her, then that would be the default. They'd be like, no, you're not.
Because the rebellious element is there now. And the fact is that rebellious elements now come with sisters who cover themselves, are pious, pray salah.
Well, they are going to quote the deen.
Exactly.
And say
and they're more religious than their mothers and their grandmothers in practice and knowledge. Sure. Whereas their mothers and grandmothers knew little but practiced it religiously.
Literally. Yeah.
So you can't prevent.
Yeah.
So you can't prevent. So
But this is my point about cultures shifting, and cultures shift due to lots of different things. Some
environment,
some forces that are welcome and some that are not.
Yeah.
And I think that a culture that wants to stay alive has to adapt somehow, right? Because otherwise it just won't survive.
It won't survive.
It won't survive. So like I think that, for example, the in-law living situation, which is a very Desi thing. I can see that. You know, there is a move of young women now saying, if that's the case, I don't want to do it. How much of that comes from? And the thing is, somebody clipped another quote of mine from a longer conversation where I gave this as an example of sort of modernity, impinging on kind of cultural Muslim practices. There were a lot of women who were very, very angry because they said living with in-laws is not an Islamic thing. It's a cultural thing, and it shouldn't be imposed on us because it's not from Islam, it's from culture. That's the first thing. And secondly, I don't have to live with in-laws. Like, you know, so
if that's one of your red lines,
right.
For sure, if you're seeking spouses and you know, perspectives, and that's one of your red lines, by all means, that's one of your red lines. But within the Desi culture, I'll tell you, especially as being here for second, third generation now, we have seen what happens when there is a detachment from the extended family and what it's done to our white counterparts, where even 80, 90 years ago, they lived with in-laws. And they lived in extended family. They'd have a grandfather, an uncle and an aunt in one house. It wasn't that long ago, right? Especially in northern towns and cities.
It's true, yeah.
So I guess another type of preventative measure, which I know some families are doing, is that, look, we won't completely do away with it, but there has to be some retention of it. Because we will end up abandoning parents where there could be a genuine need for khidmah and love and care.
But you see, sorry to jump in, you see, but that's my point in that conversation was that cultures usually form norms that kind of suit the collective, right? That make sense for the collective. The tribe. And it could be that as an individual, that puts an added strain on you, whoever you are in the system, but it's because the system works, right? That's why it is able to be perpetuated. So I'm not going to say the living with in-law system works 100% of the time. You know, we don't want the comments flooded, you know, the comment section to get flooded. But what I will say is that from an outside perspective, I can totally see the efficacy of living with your parents in a multi-generational household, because that's how human beings have lived. Like for most societies, the idea of going off on your own, living far away.
That's what we don't want normalized.
Well, but you see, because we're modern now. We're modern. And that means that we want to be independent and we want to be free and we want to be able to do whatever we want to do.
Others, though.
This is true.
We're imitating. Literally, the conversation we had before we started filming. Lesser nations follow greater nations. It is the sunnah of mankind.
But you see that
we imitate their ways because we take their metric for success.
Let's assume that everybody in this system is normal. Let's just assume everybody's just normal. Yeah. As a young woman who is come into this family and is now kind of brought in as a daughter, and if you have a child, right, inshallah, you're pregnant. And the thing is, again, I hate to say this stuff because theoretically, the idea of living close to family makes sense because at a certain point, you're going to need them and at a certain point, they're going to need you, right? So the idea of a woman having children, living in a 2-3 bedroom flat somewhere all by herself is not natural. It is not for her benefit as a human being. And in fact, I would argue that is a big reason why we have so many mental challenges after birth, because that period, you're not supposed to be on your own. You're not supposed to be by yourself. Your husband has to go to work. Your mum lives in the next town. You need support, right?
You need someone to lean on.
This sister is working. This sister's got her own stuff going on, and you're just literally by yourself in this house.
Mums and mother-in-laws come to help.
This is what's meant to happen. But if we don't believe in the system, and I say sort of especially as women, and our generation now, we're getting to our 40s, 50s, 60s. If we don't believe in the system and want to make it work in a way that, you know, people coming into it are actually benefiting, then it will be a case of, that's my red line. I'm not living with in-laws, period. And that whole system will die out. So whatever changes need to be made, I think people need to make them, whether it's, you know, boundaries, maybe space, maybe a bit more privacy. I don't know. Like I said,
tweak it to make it work.
Tweak it to make it work, because it does have benefits.
Because you can't replicate what's happening in the village in Punjab or Sylhet.
No.
You can't.
Yeah.
People have tried. It's worked for some. It didn't work for many.
Yeah.
Simply because that's just not the country and the land that we live in.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing around us doesn't complement or help the system flourish.
Yeah.
But talking of systems...
I want to talk about secret marriages.
Go on. Secret marriages. What do you want to say about secret marriages?
Just as you said, the sister can go onto Musmatch or any app and find someone, right? The more divorced people we have, the more it's likely to happen. If people are divorcing at younger ages, which is kind of what we're seeing.
Which is happening, yes.
How many people are opting out of the game at that point? No matter if they have 1, 2, 5 kids, they're not opting out. They're like, I need someone. So they go online and they look for someone. How many of the people online, the men who are online who are looking, right, are unmarried? There's some who are unmarried. There's quite a few who are married, right? Now, out of those men who are looking for a second, third or fourth, how many of their wives do you think are on board?
The vast majority would not be on board.
Right.
Overwhelming majority would not be on board.
Exactly. So it could be, to give the benefit of the doubt, it could be that they are looking and maybe they've discussed it, maybe not.
Are you short of time?
Sorry?
Have we got time?
Yeah.
Oh, yalla, let's talk about it.
It could be that they've discussed it or maybe they've not discussed it, right? But maybe when they're looking, they don't want to rock the boat, right? Because that makes sense. You're not going to tell her, cause a big upset and you haven't even found someone yet. So then you find someone, you're thinking, let me find someone. Then if it seems to be worth it, then I'll put it to her or whatever, right? And I think that, I feel like I've said I think so many times. I've only seen a small section, small fraction of what's out there. There will be people who can give you sort of a much wider view. But from the little that I've seen, the number of married men speaking to women for marriage is more than we think. And out of those, the ones who have their wife's blessing are very few. So what are they going to do? They're either going to try and get sort of the relationship and kind of negotiate a settlement with that sister. And she may say yes and she may say no. You know, I remember so many sisters message that, you know, the husband is married, wife at home, you know, maybe they're not, you know, their physical life is non-existent or whatever, and he doesn't want to commit zina. I'm sure you've heard this kind of thing before, right? Yes. And he needs to find, you know, a way to stay halal and everything. So what's the situation? If he's from a Desi family, what is the likelihood of him telling his mother?
Yeah.
It's not happening, right? I met a couple on the weekend and they were saying how the husband's brother went and married a second. She was secret. The family was not for it. When they heard about it, all the walls shut down. He's got 2 kids with her. Mm-hmm. So now he has 2 children here, 2 children there, who, as far as the family is concerned, are illegitimate because they don't recognize the marriage. Yeah. So I think I mean, again, there are so many variables because he was saying, I feel that if the wife had not forced him into a corner, this wouldn't have happened.
I have a bit more of, I wouldn't say primal understanding, but I have a bit more of, I try to scope it out a bit more, Sister Naima. I see it as this. I genuinely do believe, from a fitri point of view, in terms of how Allah has created Adam, our father Adam, and those who came from him, that for most men, they are polygynous. Mm-hmm. Meaning there is no mental gymnastics around the ability to love multiple women or to have multiple relationships. My issue becomes, or at least the way I see it, is that now that Muslim men know that the Prophet ﷺ practiced it, the Sahaba practiced it, Allah describes it, orders it, defines it in detail in the Quran and so forth. So it's a part of our tradition. How I see it is that impulse, that polygynous impulse, is being met in different ways in the West. For example, I know this may sound crazy, but I think the desire to have another woman, for whatever reasons it may be, it could be for children, it could be just for companionship, whatever the reasons are that men want for another wife, I feel that the impulse is being fulfilled different ways. For example, we are exposed to more women now.
True.
In the workplace, in community, in societies, in Islamic institutions. We see them every day. We engage them every day. We shake hands with them. Some of us, we know we shouldn't do, or others do. And others, they make the conversations longer with them.
Sure.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I do, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's true.
So the itch, as they call it,
Right.
is being fulfilled in a different way
Right.
that doesn't require marriage or adultery.
Right.
So a brother who may feel frustrated or may have issues, or may not even have any issues, he may want another company.
Sure.
Yeah, that's being fulfilled elsewhere.
Right.
So therefore, the desire to be polygynous is neither materially there and nor is it emotionally there, but it's being that itch is being fulfilled. But that's what I see. That's what I've seen from a lot of conversations. That, bro, in theory, I'd love to have one, but it's just long. It's emotionally too much to invest, and financially, I think it'll be difficult.
Yeah.
So therefore, I just manage it in a different way, and sometimes, may Allah forgive me, I indulge in things which actually prevent me from another marriage. I'm hearing that a lot more.
Interesting. I'm not surprised, to be honest, because I think that the cost of another marriage, and again, I'm not saying this in a triumphalist way, right? Because I think if you are a woman who's married to a husband and you have children, your instinct is to protect that union, right? You don't want to share your man. You don't want to share resources. You don't want that to happen to your family, right? You don't want the emotional, the financial, any of it, right? So I get that. So if men all did what their first wives wanted, there would be no polygamy. I can guarantee that maybe like 0.5 or 1%.
Spot on, of course.
Okay.
There wouldn't be.
Right?
There wouldn't be.
So, but then Allah's created men different, right? So now there's a tension there. But if indeed men prioritize their first wife and the family they have, which again is also sensible, and said it's long, it's too much emotional, it's too much financial, whatever, what does actually happen to all the other women who are not married, who are maybe not, able to find somebody who is single and is also solvent as well, which is a big deal, right? What does happen to the ones that we always hear about, the widows, the divorcees, the single mums, etc.? They're locked out, basically. They're locked out of the institution. And again, I think as a society, I think that's also an issue because
it's antithetical to Islam, antithetical to our ways,
right?
Our collectivist, communalist, selfless tradition that we have, and that is that everyone part of the community is in some shape or form khidmah to one another.
Yeah.
And if that marketplace is closed to our sisters who are widows and divorcees, that is oppressive.
It's
that is oppressive.
Yeah, but I will say, I remember I was on a podcast.
Are you making a case for secret marriages?
No, I can't make a case for secret marriages.
Or a justification of it.
I will.
Or a contextualization of it.
None of those actually. I think actually the secret marriage setup seems like less trouble in the long run, in the short run, but in the long run it's worse. There may be some examples where a discreet marriage, we put it that way, kind of keeps the peace and makes sure that everybody can get what they need without disruption. Yeah. But often those relationships will escalate to something. So the sister may, because at the end of the day, we know that if your secret says you're not being given your haqq, because your haqq is to be recognized, right? The walima is why. It's there to recognize you as a couple. If you're not recognized as a couple, it means you can't go out in public. It means that you don't have in-laws, that if you have children, they don't have, grandparents. So there's a whole lot of other things.
For sure.
That result from the fact that you haven't been sort of publicly acknowledged as his wife. And I think that those things add up after a while. And they can lead to just really ridiculous situations where you see the person once a month in a hotel. And not many sisters see that as being a wife. It doesn't feel great after a while. It doesn't feel great.
Look, I would describe myself as someone who's an advocate of polygyny. But I am not so supportive of what is allowed or what is presented, as I don't think is conducive. Because if you're going to move like you're in an adulterous relationship with a legitimate wife, wallahi, that can never be healthy. No. Even from a practical day-to-day point of view. No. How are you managing keeping the secret? Right? In a very, very internalized world where everyone's up in everyone's business. Yeah. Everyone's got a digital footprint. Anyone can. Yeah. It's just not healthy.
Yeah.
whether you're changing names on phone books or you've put like a screen blacker, whatever what people use, code words, locking off or literally blocking your secret wife's number for a particular period of time to ensure no calls.
Hey, I never heard of that before.
Yeah, so there's certain windows where there's no comms, so you're not even accessible. That can never be healthy.
No, it may work in the short term, like I said, but longevity. If we're talking about longevity, and I guess again, at the end of the day, we can say whatever we want, but people will make their decisions, right? But I think the value of these conversations is maybe to show people a different perspective. And if you take the advice on board, or if it makes sense to you, alhamdulillah, you may dismiss it and say, you don't know my situation. I've got XYZ going on, which is fine. But I do think that the value of these conversations is so that people can at least be exposed to a particular perspective, or a number of perspectives that may inform their own actions moving forward. I would always say to a sister, I remember I've had so many people, kind of have this conversation with me to say, this is the offer on the table, right? He says this, he says that, this is his situation, etc., right? Sometimes I'll say, is this what you want?
And those offers can change as well.
Let me tell you something.
If you're not about misyar specifically, those conditions can change. They can be dropped. They can be abandoned. They can be added upon.
The chances, I don't know about from the man's side, but the chances of the woman starting to feel differently about something that she agreed to, very, very, very high.
Yeah, very high. Very high.
And that's
very common.
Yeah, and I think I remember hearing that that Islamically she is allowed to claim her right and
add to the list. If there's something she didn't commit to in the beginning,
yes,
it's something that she can raise later on in the marriage.
And then of course now it's like, well, that was never the agreement. I can't do XYZ. All it's going to mean, Dilly, is more divorces, more broken hearts, and more kids kind of traumatized by adults' actions.
One of the counters of not normalizing this type of secret marriage, and by the way, just for our viewers and listeners, and I know Sister Naima, I don't think we're not dismissing misyar as a practice or its place or existence within the tradition. What we're saying is that this is not a healthy way of how it's practiced. Same page ish,
Ish.
The way it's practiced is not something that's conducive for a strong family setup.
Especially not with women living in the same town or city,
for sure. I also do think, though, one of the ways in which we can help overcome those bad practices or that practice itself in the context that we live in is to have more frank and open conversations and normalize polygyny. Agreed.
I think, somebody said...
how else are you going to do it?
Somebody said that, when her husband came to her with, the desire to do this, and no, it wasn't a piece of advice, actually, to say, if your husband does come to you and say, look, this is something that I'm thinking of, rather than shutting it down or stonewalling or threatening him with, then you better divorce me or, take the kids, whatever, this person was saying, if you marry her, you make her a proper wife. You're upfront and open and honest about her with me and your family. And if you're not prepared to give her equal in terms of money and time and all of that kind of thing, don't do it. Because all you're doing is setting yourself up for disgrace really on Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? So that this person was saying that response is the response of a believer. Because you want for your sister what you want for yourself, right? And I'm not saying that everybody will be able to, but I think it also hopefully will cause the brother to say, am I prepared to do this the right way? And if I am, alhamdulillah, right? Because I know successful polygamous couples.
So do I.
Right? And
I was just thinking the successful couples. And they do...
Not couples. Whatever they are.
The setup.
Families.
And they all have certain indicators I've seen consistent.
Yes.
From the brothers,
what would you see?
From the brothers, I see a lot of emotional intelligence.
Yes.
I see patience. I see fantastic, impeccable time management.
And self-control.
Yeah. That's what I've seen, those three things. Yes. And where it's gone sideways and pear-shaped, it's an absence of those things from a brother's perspective.
Agreed.
He's emotionally immature.
Yeah.
He has a very childish way of expressing favoritism. There's nothing wrong with having favorites. He's not just and fair, and he's very poor with time management.
Yeah.
Right. So I've seen those qualities in those marriages I have, but the successful ones, they have all those things.
I think from the sister's side, where I've seen that it being done successfully is a lot of honor and what's the word? Transparency, right? So the women are honored. They both acknowledge their co-wives, etc. And not to say you have to be in each other's households and in their lives, but the ones I've seen that work, they have a relationship as sisters.
I do not know a successful secret marriage.
Okay. Wow.
I can't think. And I'm thinking of du'at, activism.
And you're thinking of it
members,
not being successful, meaning it broke off.
Meaning it broke off.
Okay.
Or like there's no meaningful longevity to it. Not that they were together for a period of time and it just didn't work out. But I'm talking about where in most cases it ended quite badly.
It's too much. It's too much if you think about it. I mean, to also from a woman's perspective, even if you look at your diary and you see, I've got the kids, I've got my work, I've got my friends, like I've got a whole life, right? I don't have time for a husband, that kind of thing. Like, if I see him once a week, that's cool, that's wonderful. Even if that's your situation, if you, need him and you're not able to reach him, or it's not your time and he can't come to support you or help you, it does something to you.
Of course it will.
Right? If he does not take care of you financially and he does not contribute financially, it does something to you. If you start to fall in love with him and you miss him, but you can't see him and he can't give you any more than the original agreement, it starts to do something to you. So at a certain point, either you're too hurt to actually function in the relationship or you're just annoyed. It's like, what's the point of this? What's the point of this?
Yeah.
What is the benefit of you at the end of the day? I might as well be on my own. So then cycle starts again, subhanAllah.
Yeah. Any more comments on secret marriages?
When it comes to sort of relationships in general and marriage in particular and child rearing, is just to keep going back to our niyyah and trying as much as we can to do things with an akhirah focus, because it does make a difference. If you can make decisions with your akhirah in mind rather than just this dunya and what's happening here, inshallah you will do things with ihsan, and that will put barakah in whatever you do, regardless of whether it lasts or it doesn't, but at least there's barakah in it. May Allah guide us all.
Ameen ya Rab. And I'm just going to add to that by saying that when polygyny is practiced correctly, with the correct niyyah, for the sake of Allah, for the betterment of the community and the wider ummah, society actually flourishes. The most forgotten, the most abandoned, the most neglected are actually supported, are elevated, and we have beautiful families that come from when it's practiced correctly. When it's not practiced correctly or with the wrong intention, we see breakup of families, and we see polarized tension between brothers and sisters, believing men and women who are supposed to be allies of one another. And we saw that type of conversation in the online space, at least. And like we said, I think Gaza kind of just forced everyone to focus elsewhere. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aid us all. I mean, I think we're Muslims. I'm doing I think now. But genuinely, look, the way it was practiced by the best of human beings, from whose example we should aspire to follow, it has great societal benefits. But brothers and sisters need to do a lot more if they're going to take... Marriage generally is a serious thing.
It is.
Well, it's a serious thing. And whilst I like the idea of Muslims are... On the one hand, I'm hearing sisters are getting married a bit older because of career, profession, studies, whatever. But I'm also hearing couples are getting married younger. But I'm hearing divorces are happening a lot more often. So it's all happening. And in the absence of data, we can't really... All we can really say with confidence is generally we'll follow the trends of the dominant group. So in that case, white Westerners are having less marriages and getting more divorce and having less kids. That's trickled down to diaspora Muslim communities, whether we like it or not. And we have to deal with all of that whilst dealing with the realities and the technicalities of polygyny.
And I think, obviously people do say, and I've heard people saying this, like, well, why are you guys always talking about polygamy? Like, it's such a small thing. But I think that in a society or in even a space where, there are certain narratives that dominate, I think it's still important for us to talk about and try to study and understand these aspects. Maybe they're minority issues. They could be. Maybe single wives is not even a big thing, but it's a thing. And we know that it's a thing, right? So I think there needs to be at least one podcast every few months across the space that addresses the issue. Because I will say that, women are making their own decisions. Right? A lot of the time, these are mature women. These are not like young girls coming out of, high school, But I think having getting more of an overview on how these things tend to play out. Maybe you don't know anyone who's done it before. Maybe you've never heard of it actually before. And maybe this is your first time being presented with this type of scenario, right? So if maybe you've watched a podcast and you can ask better questions and make better decisions for yourself or be better prepared for potential consequences, hopefully you can be more satisfied with your outcomes at the end of the day, because people are going to make their own decisions. No matter what we say or whatever whatever even data is presented, people are still going to make their own decisions. But at least for brothers and sisters to be aware of, these are the different things to bear in mind. These are the different things that can happen. And you need to really think through this very, very carefully. Don't do this stuff on a whim. Because you know how you said marriage is a serious thing.
It is a serious thing.
You say that, and in a traditional and cultural context it is.
Okay,
but in a
thing.
modern context where people say nikah is just a contract, it's just a contract. All you need is a witness and a wali or a wali substitute, and then boom, it's on.
There's law and the spirit of the law.
Yes.
There's the technicality of it.
Yes.
A threshold that is to be met legalistically.
Yeah.
And there's the actual altruistic, the asal, civilization, worldly, deeply.
It's easier for people to concentrate on that.
Yeah, but we shouldn't. Because focusing excessively on that, and I've spoken to some brothers about this.
But you know the attitude I'm speaking about, right? You're familiar with this idea that it's just.
Yeah, of course. But again, I will reiterate to our viewers and listeners is that technically, legalistically, yes, those things need to be fulfilled for it to be permissible, halal in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you can do that 1,000 times, and whilst having the incorrect niyyah, a misunderstood application of the law and its greater benefits in terms of why the law exists in the first place, i.e. the institution of marriage, what we're talking about here, is ultimately to build strong, believing societies. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah, of course.
So if we now say that, because the Prophet ﷺ said, he goes, I want to be proud of your numbers on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So get married. He said to get married, have often children. He told one Sahaba, how do you increase the risk? Get married. Nothing's changed. Get married again. So
really?
Yes, there is. There's prophetic narrations where risk and marriage is interlinked, right? So many of these things. So the wider thing is strong marriages create strong families, which create strong society, which creates a strong ummah. Yeah. If you're just thinking technicalities and legalistically, then you may not be fulfilling the wider maslahah, the actual reason why the law exists in the first place. And if you ignore those things, you could be trying to do the right thing but doing it in a complete haram way. Yeah. Why people focus on this, I found from my observations and my research and my engagements, is the fear of committing zina. That's the one reason I commonly hear all the time, is that they were at the brink of zina.
And then they called the imam?
Or we done it via Zoom, or we done it via Skype, or we done it in a FaceTime or a WhatsApp group. Okay. So now you have to question yourself, how much at the brink of committing zina were you that you felt that was the appropriate and measured decision to take at that time? I mean, Allah knows best. But
it was measured for that situation, but obviously the goal is never to be in that situation. But of course, this is the reality of, unfortunate, and this is what's hard, is Muslims are human beings. Yeah. Ultimately, we are human, and the same temptations and kind of distractions that are out there for others, we will be facing those. So it's easy for us to say Muslims should never find themselves in a situation of khalwa where they are faced with that kind of temptation, but we know that it happens. Yeah, of course. And so for those who that is their situation, may Allah guide them, protect them, and put barakah in their affairs. But let's try to not get into those situations if we haven't already got there. You don't want to be so emotionally entangled with somebody or so physically in so much proximity with someone that literally that is your next step. You don't want to be in that situation. So rolling it back, kind of pulling back. We were talking about this at the marriage event where, telling sisters, if you've met somebody, through an app or whatever, don't get emotionally involved right away. Don't start imagining your wedding. Don't start imagining what your kids will look like and naming them, because it's too much too soon. And that we tend to make wrong decisions. And obviously everything is the qadr, right? But if your decision is based on being emotionally heightened, or somebody's love bombed you, or you've kind of made up a story in your head which is not true, and you make your decision based on that, there's consequences for that,
Final question. It's a bit of a long one, but it kind of ties everything in. In some shape or form it does, because we spoke about social media, talk about the GMC summit, we spoke about virality, we spoke about legacy, institution, marriages, red pill culture, was all of that. Which then brings me to my final question to you. When I shared some clips the other day of some right-wing podcasts, basically slamming me for all 5 pillars for various reasons. Subversive, Islamist, extreme. Is this how Muslims? Is that the real representation of Muslims from Trigonometry? A podcast I know you used to listen. You used to listen to it.
Yeah.
Do Muslims belong in the West? Do we actually belong in the West? Is our future as diaspora communities, as we are growing in number, and we are becoming increasingly comfortable and accustomed to life in the West, is this somewhere where we have a future, or do you foresee or believe or feel that there will be some type of mass hijrah or incremental hijrah away from it? What's your thoughts, opinions? Because it kind of all ties in, because a lot of the things we experience as individuals, as in married couples, whatever it may be, there's a lot of external.
Yeah.
There's a lot of external pressure, influences, brainwashing, all of that's happening. So is there a future for us here?
I think there is a future, but it may not look like the present.
Okay.
Why do I say that? Because typically history shows us that society gets to a tipping point. Have we reached the tipping point in the UK of tolerance towards Muslims and especially Muslim institutions, right? Have we reached the tipping point?
What do you think? I think we're getting there.
I think we're either there or we're getting there. For sure.
Quite close.
And again, you know, not to sound controversial, but I get it. Because if it was my country, I would feel very much the same. And I think in any country that you look at where a minority has grown in numbers and in expression and in power, the local community starts to get antsy, especially if that particular minority has a very different way of life and a very strong kind of creed, if you like.
Yep.
So I think it was inevitable. Whether we will start to see like a scaling back of our freedoms as Muslims to do this stuff depends very much on how real that kind of English first voice is. You know, like if Nigel Farage comes into power, we're going to see it. I think if Reform UK comes in, we are going to start to see that.
We've already seen it from Keir Starmer. Let's be honest about it. There's certain policies that he's introduced and he's focusing on, or at least the rhetoric appears that he's pandering to that voice, very vocal, and it's a mainstream voice.
It is a mainstream voice.
It's a very mainstream voice. You know, when you look at Tommy Robinson and his meteoric reintegration,
he used to be a fringe figure,
fringe EDL thug. Now everyone's talking about remigration. Everyone's talking about mass deportations. The Home Office will be releasing like a Premier League table of crimes committed by people by their ethnic origin. So you can see where this is heading. So, but I posit one thing. To viewers and listeners, I've engaged with the far right. I've engaged with many of their big faces and names and figureheads. And I'll always posit this to them. Why isn't there large numbers of influx of white people going to the global south or developing world? There's a very recent explanation. I'm not scapegoating. I'm not putting all blame on European colonialism, but there's a very obvious financial reason and historical reason as to why people come to, or migrate to the West. It's for financial stability. It's for the money. It's for the fulus.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
It's
not because they like your values.
It's not because they like your weather.
Your freedom,
or your weather. Like that. It's true.
Or your cuisine. It's because whether they're escaping war or economic sanctions or destabilization, or they just want to make peace.
It's an economic decision.
It's an economic decision.
And it always was an economic decision. If you look at when immigrants were invited or economic migrants were invited to the UK, it was an economic decision.
By the way, the far right now have a counter for that.
Oh, what's that?
They basically said to me, they go, Dilly, fine, but we didn't invite you. It was on our mandate. I goes, by we, I mean your governments.
Okay, because the reality is, and absolutely right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, governments are the ones who make decisions,
then
right?
And anger towards them.
Exactly. Because
this
is the counter, right? My son says this as well. He said this...
The counter.
that this kind of fermenting of dissatisfaction and aiming it at minorities who may have made inroads or who are successful, etc., is like a distraction from who's really in charge and who's really pulling strings.
Yeah.
And it's not us, because we don't have the power to grant asylum. That's not us. That's the government. That is whoever's in charge making decisions that, yes, are impacting local English people in a way they don't like. But then that's who your argument should be with, not with us. not with us sort of like as maybe from
Second, third gen,
working class people or middle class people, whatever the case may be. But I think that, you know, obviously different European countries have different cultures. And if a country wants to maintain a homogenous society, it's best to keep immigrants of all sorts out and sort out your own affairs. Unfortunately, Europe is a dying continent when it comes to population. So
it's an aging population that's not having kids.
This is what I'm saying.
So what do you do? Who does your work? Who do you tax?
I feel bad for Europeans who are aware of the state of play, because they know that their populations are dropping, that they're below replacement levels, and they also know that black and brown people have more children in general than white people.
Wallahi,
right?
I said this to Jada Fratson. I said, Jada, don't take it personally when Muslims have X amount of children, whether it's the Arctic or Antarctica.
Yeah.
Wherever you put us, Timbuktu,
We're going to have more kids.
We're going to have married, we're going to have kids.
Yeah.
Don't see it as a specific agenda to replace you. It's
shame.
not. Wallahi, I said this to her.
She understands?
She understands. We're not here to replace. We're just going to get married and have kids.
But check this. You see, this is when you zoom out of the current affairs and you look at history as a whole. You can see. Look, I'm from Zimbabwe, right? My parents are South African. My dad's white. My mom's black. As Africans, we didn't appreciate the Europeans coming there. Okay, I'm sure they didn't in the subcontinent either. Okay, whites came, the Europeans came. They saw potential in our resources. They extracted those resources. They fulfilled the potential and created the Industrial Revolution. Good on you, fellas. Fantastic. Smashed it. Absolutely smashed it. Built some amazing systems, railroads, electricity, etc. We benefit from that today. Okay, but the reality is when you came and imposed your religion, your language, your dress, your customs, etc. on us, we didn't like it. We had to do it because that was the power imbalance. You had what we needed. And in fact, you made it impossible for us pretty much to do anything unless we played by your rules when you were in charge in Africa, in Asia and elsewhere. So now the tables have turned. It doesn't feel great. And I'm not saying this in a triumphalist way because I get it, right?
And we're not even doing it with guns or planes.
And it's not even,
army.
It's like you said, it's not even an agenda.
It's not an agenda.
It's just that this is where history has brought us today as Europe, as Asia, as Africa. This is where we are today, right? So any solutions that will favor any group are not going to be accepted by any other group, right? Because ultimately we're all sharing the same land, sharing the same resources, but we have different ways of life, different values, different things, and we have things that bind us together, right? So it's not a great time, I think, to be a Europe first kind of campaigner, because you can see what's happening. You can see that globally, white people are a minority.
But since they know the answer, they know the solution. So I've spoken to many of them, and I said to them, why, if you know that the white in the UK, the birth rate in the UK is 1.6, 1.5. The only reason it's 1.5 and 1.6 is because of the birth rate of the non-whites. Yeah. If you take away the birth rate of the non-white indigenous British people, their birth rate is somewhere between 0.9 to 1.2. That's crazy.
Yeah.
With an aging population, you are basically replacing yourselves. There are more pet parents per household than children under 12 in the UK. You are seeing and witnessing your own replacement. But at the same time, channeling frustration towards those who are having more children. Now, if the argument is by you I mean Muslims. Or non-whites, but mainly Muslims.
Mainly Muslims.
You're a strain on the welfare system. Your women folk are relying on welfare. Well, if they're not working and they're having lots of kids, they can't work. They need benefits. I'm not saying that's the correct mindset, but naturally, bigger families or families where there's more children and the mum is more full-time, she may be more...
But look at, how often have we seen sort of on TV those shows where there's a family, a working class or under sub-working class family where they're on benefits and they have 6 children, right? the fact is that there is no easy answer. That's unfortunately and people pushing an easy answer are being disingenuous.
Absolutely.
Because mass deportation, for real though, like look at how many of our institutions in this country are based on black and brown labor.
Wallahi, they would collapse.
Right?
They do not understand that it would collapse within 48 hours.
But it sounds good, right? And these are talking points, and even ban the burqa and all of that. It sounds really good, and it gets people riled up.
Ban halal, ban sharia, ban polygyny, ban.
It sounds great. Yeah. It sounds really good. But firstly, most of those things will not impact you in the slightest as a non-Muslim. So if they ban halal, how does that improve your life? How does that improve your economic prospects? How does it improve your children's future? It doesn't, right? So I don't think that there are any easy answers. And I think it is a low point for European history. I would say that they probably will look at it, in years to come and say this was the decline of Europe, just like, Douglas Murray and them talk about. I think it's true. I think that they are facing extinction, but it's not our fault. It's not like,
and I don't think it's an agenda either. It's
not that we're trying to to make them die out. It's so many things. It's postmodernism, it's materialism, it is this whole feminist movement, for example. Post-feminist societies, people have, have sex before marriage, get married later, have fewer children. Now, if you look post all of that, many women don't want to have children at all. Many families don't want to have, couples will want to be child-free. Economically, your society is so that everybody is struggling to live and survive. You've broken the family unit so that there are no extended family networks anymore. So even people who choose to have kids don't have family to support them. What is happening now started with the Industrial Revolution. It didn't start with Muslim immigration. It started with the Industrial Revolution, and now people are trying to course correct, but the boat's too big.
It doesn't work like that. Final comments. What have you got coming up? Tell us about your tours. I mean, I think this podcast will go out within the next 5 days. So with that in mind, what's coming up? Where should people visit? What's going on?
Hopefully a revival of the YouTube channel. Inshallah. Instagram, I'm very active there. I'm planning a Sisters Roadshow for November, inshallah, which will be coming to a city near you, bi'idhnillah. And just working with more people with their books. Lots of books launches coming up, mashallah. And that's going to be my focus for the next few years, inshallah, writing communities, etc.
Sister Naima, I thoroughly enjoyed today's long overdue conversation.
Barakallah feek.
Allah bless you and preserve you, Ameen, and accept your efforts. It's always wonderful having you on, and I look forward to part 3 whenever that is, inshallah.
Inshallah. May Allah bless you, Dilly. Thank you.
Brothers, sisters, friends and foes, I hope you all thoroughly enjoyed this podcast as much as I did. Do remember you can find this show and all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, don't be cheeky. Do remember to click subscribe. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.